It's that time of the year where the days are getting shorter, the leaves are falling, and Shadow of the Mad King is out. In celebration of the spooky vibes this year, I wanted to highlight my 10 favorite undead in all of Guild Wars 2. This could be different bosses, random enemies, or even allies that I just like across the game. So let's get started. In the number 10 spot are Risen Chickens. This is a very nostalgic pick for me because for whatever reason, I associate vanilla Guild Wars 2 with these creatures. They are undead minions of Zhaitan that you can find throughout Balcor Sleep and the Cursed Shore, and also during a part in the Vex's Lab mini-dungeon. They are really just random mobs that attack you, aren't too challenging to defeat, and are also part of a few different events. I think they were kind of shocking to me to see for a few reasons. Chickens are adorable, and it's sad to see an undead one, but at the same time, that's really a cool thing. Additionally, most of the undead you fight up to this point are humanoid, so fighting an undead animal is a change of pace. I just have a lot of memories with seeing this mob back in vanilla. But one cool part about them is that you can actually get a mini undead chicken, which is part of the mini collection set 1. I remember wondering if you could get this from the Lost Orrian jewelry boxes that you can buy in ore because the mini risen priest of Balthazar was obtained this way, but in actuality, you get them from mini eggs and other gem store stuff. In the number 9 spot is Mazdak the Accursed. This is a pretty interesting lore character who serves as the boss for chapter 3 of the Sylvari personal story. I wrote a whole lore video about this character in Rionok, but let me summarize his story for you. Where he was once a prince of Or who left the nation with a large group of people and established the kingdom of Kryda, where they built several settlements, including Lion's Arch, and Mazdak became the first king of Kryda. Centuries later, he was risen by Zhaitan and forced into the dragon's servitude as a Lich, where a quick shout out to all of Zhaitan's Liches in this game, they are pretty cool. But Mazdak the Accursed is pretty well known for having killed Rionok, who is a noble Sylvari that ended up being the first Sylvari to ever die, meaning that Mazdak is the first person or creature or cliff to have killed a Sylvari, where during the personal story we claim justice for Rionok and restore some hope for the Sylvari people. As a Sylvari main, this is a pretty big part of the story to me, and overall I think Mazdak is just a cool lore character. In the number 8 spot are Necromancer Minions. It wouldn't be one of my top 10 lists if I didn't bundle together a bunch of entries into one spot. Necromancers have 8 different minions that they can summon. Blood Fiends, Bone Minions, Flesh Worms, Shadow Fiends, Flesh Golems, Madness, and Shambling Horrors. Shadow Fiends are more of a shadow minion I guess instead of an undead, so we'll just focus on the other 7. Madnesses are summoned while you are in Lich form, which is an elite skill, and the Shambling Horrors are summoned from the Rise Shout ability available to Reapers. Both of these minions are small and weak, but kind of cute. Blood Fiends are a Necromancer's best friend, and they are there with you from the start. Bone Fiends and Bone Minions are both interesting minions that I don't see used too often, but are cool looking nonetheless. Flesh Worm is a super cool ability that has a ton of interesting uses across the game, and the Flesh Golem is the big one that I like to use a lot. Minions are an important part of the Necromancer archetype, and I just don't think the profession would be the same without them. A lot of people who have played Necromancer have run a minion build at some point, also known as a Minionmancer, where you summon all of the minions with you at once and run around the world. I've always liked the idea of Minionmancer squads in World vs. World because you can look like a group of 100 or so people just running around the map, but you don't see it done too often because the build itself is pretty weak outside of open world exploration, but nevertheless, minions are a big part of Guild Wars 2 and they all look pretty cool. And the number 7 spot is Zhaitan. I mean, Zhaitan has to be on the list. He is the original boss of Guild Wars 2, serving as the final encounter of the personal story during victory or death. The entire core game is built around eventually reaching Zhaitan. Most of the original high-level zones were in Or, Zhaitan's domain. You continuously fight Risen and minions of Zhaitan like the Risen Chicken and Mazdak, who we have talked about throughout vanilla Guild Wars 2, and it all builds up to this epic fight against the undead Dragon of Death. Well, epic might not be the best word for some people. The final fight itself is a bit controversial with how mundane, I guess, the fight is, where a lot of people complain that the majority of the fight is just fighting Risen while on the glory of Tyria while blasting Zhaitan with a cannon, and that is what the fight is. ArenaNet hadn't mastered Elder Dragon fights until later. With that said, from a cinematography point of view, the fight against Zhaitan was incredible, and a large part of that is from how cool Zhaitan looks. I mean, his model is insane and is one of the coolest looking bosses in the game, and with how important Zhaitan is for the story of Guild Wars 2, I had to add him to the list. In the number 6 spot is Steve, also known as the Labyrinthian Horror. This is a boss that will randomly appear in the Mad King's Labyrinth if a player triggers his spawn in one of 4 locations. He is a very powerful mob and will do laps around the labyrinth hunting down any and all players. Because of how powerful he is and how many times players fight him, he has become a meme in the Guild Wars 2 community, hence why he's called Steve. The boss fight itself is decently fun, but a lot of people find him annoying because a lot of people like to skip fighting the bosses in the labyrinth and focus on the other doors you can find to maximize the amount of gold they make, which I think makes this boss a bit more fun because he's the bane of gold farmers. And I think the boss is just fun in general because of how much chaos he can cause. No matter what group you are in, if you are running around the labyrinth by yourself, he can actually be pretty scary because he can end your life very quickly. And overall, he's just an iconic skeleton in Guild Wars 2. In the number 5 spot is the awakened Koss Dejarin. Koss is a fan favorite character from the original Guild Wars who played a major part in the Nightfall campaign. Generally, people love his presence in the story, and he has some pretty decent moments throughout the story. Of course, the events of Guild Wars took place roughly 250 years ago, so most of the characters from that game are dead. But with the Path of Fire expansion, we have the opportunity to interact with a few different characters in a variety of different ways throughout the expansion and the Living World season that took place afterwards. One I wish was Koss, where we get to meet Koss once again during episode 1 of season 4, and I was definitely surprised when we saw him. The lead up to his reintroduction was pretty cool, and then the encounter against him was pretty cool as well. We see Koss here and there throughout the story, and it's always nice to see him. His interactions with Koss are also pretty cool, and I just like his presence in the world of Tyria. And the number 4 spot is a bit of an interesting one, and it's the skeletons from the Confessor's End story mission. Let me explain. Confessor's End is the final mission of episode 4 of Living World season 3 titled The Head of the Snake, where Confessor's End is the mission where we siege Caudicus's manor and defeat the White Mantle Confessor, Caudicus Beetlestone. There is quite a bit of stuff going on in this mission, but I want to focus on one specific boss fight. Partway through the mission, we fight High Inquisitor Victor, who, fun fact, is actually the replacement for Zera, who is the final boss of Raid Wing 3. But where Zera was a powerful Mesmer, Victor was a powerful Necromancer, where he has a very special ability called Summon Skeletons, where as you fight him, he summons skeletons to fight you. Now if we go all the way back to number 8 on this list, we talked about Necromancer Minions. There are a couple of minions made out of bones, but none are traditional skeletons, meaning that Necromancer players don't have an ability to summon skeletons like this Necromancer who is a member of the White Mantle does. Where when this originally came out, this sparked a bit of speculation that there might be a future elite specialization, such as the one coming out with Path of Fire, which might include an ability to summon hordes of skeletons to fight your enemies. But of course, that has not happened yet. This is an aspect of dark necromantic spellcasters that is missing from the game, and I personally would love to see this come out in the future. Some sort of necromancer elite specialization that can summon a ton of skeletons and control them, with perhaps a revamp to the older minions and skills that ties into a lot of the other minions as well. I think there's a lot of room for potential here, and people have discussed this a lot, and I really do hope we see it in the future. In the number 3 spot is Ambassador Sianna. Sianna is a character that not a lot of people pay attention to, but is someone that I have been thinking about a lot recently, where she's kind of a side character right now, but maybe one of the main characters in a future expansion. The political landscape in Alona is crazy after the defeat of Palawa Joko. A lot of Awakened are in allegiance with the Modern Crescent, but a lot of Awakened have taken a different path and have formed a general group referred to as the Free Awakened. One of the leaders and the ambassador for this group in political summits is Ambassador Sianna, where I don't think she's technically the main leader of this group, as that character hasn't been introduced yet, but in my head she kind of is. Where I think there's a lot of room for this character in the future of Guild Wars 2's story. On an extreme end, she may be the candidate for leading Alona, or at least a large section of it, into the future, where she's definitely going to play a large role in the reintegration of the Awakened into society and diplomatic relations with foreign nations, as we have seen throughout the story, like with her diplomatic mission to Cantha. And at the very least, we will interact with her a lot whenever we return to Alona in the future, where alongside all that, I think she's a pretty decent character, and it's really cool that she is a prominent undead ally that works with the people of Tyria. In the number 2 spot is one of the most important lore character, boss, villain, and ally in the entire game, Mad King Thorn. It wouldn't be a spooky list of undead that came out during Shadow of the Mad King if Thorn wasn't on this list. Before we dive into the gameplay, let's talk about lore, because there's actually quite a bit of stuff to learn about this man. He has rivals with Palawa Joko, whom he met at a young age when Joko visited Kryta. He tortured bugs, servants, civilians, and more. He executed people who accused him of murder, made fun of him, and sneezed in a room 4 blocks away. He had 8 wives, one of which was killed by Thorn when he put her in a coffin full of rats and dumped it into the sea. He likes to tell jokes that you can find scrolling through r/Traherne jokes, and so much more. There is a lot going on with Thorn. But in Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, he plays a central part of the Mad King's Day and Shadow of the Mad King Festival for each game respectively. He's a fan favorite character who plays a central role in multiple different activities and is just a central part of the festival. He's probably one of the more well-known characters given how popular Shadow of the Mad King is and how anyone who has ran through Lion's Arch during this festival will have seen him walking around. He's just a really interesting and comical character who actually has a pretty decent boss fight, and he's one of my favorite characters in all of Guild Wars 2 and is one of my favorite undead in the game. And now for the number 1 spot. For my favorite undead in the entire It's Joko. Like, you could have seen this coming from a mile away. I think this might be the number 1 undead for the majority of players who play Guild Wars 2. He's just a great character. If you don't know much about Joko, I shamelessly recommend that you watch my 31.5-minute lore and story video about Palawa Joko. It is one of my favorite videos that I have ever made, partially because Palawa Joko is one of my favorite characters in the entire Guild Wars franchise. Let me give you some highlights about this character. Where, like I mentioned previously, he has a rivalry with Mad King Thorn, where Joko actually plays a small part in the Shadow of the Mad King festival. But alongside that, Joko is an incredibly powerful Lich who is a master of necromancy. He is known as the Scourge of Abbey, which is a title he claimed as he began to conquer the continent of Elona before being stopped by the rebel leader Tri Asa, where the Order of Whispers was created to imprison Joko after his defeat to Tri, where he was later freed by the Sun Spears in exchange for his knowledge that the Sun Spears used to traverse the desolation in order to prevent Nightfall, where after the events of Nightfall, he regrows his power and eventually conquers all of Elona, which leads into the events of Path of Fire in Season 4, where the final cinematic of Episode 3 of Season 4 is one of my favorite moments in the entire game. Joko is just an all-around really cool character who is incredibly intimidating. I love all of his lines throughout the Guild Wars 2 story, and I think he was well executed, both literary and literally, in very good ways. He's one of my favorite characters in Guild Wars 2, and is my favorite undead in the entire game. And that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. There are a lot of undead in Guild Wars 2, given the fact that the Risen and Awakened are 2 prominent factions, and that there are a bunch of other undead in other areas of the game as well. I threw a bunch of honorable mentions down in the description, but if there are any undead that you like in the game that I didn't share on this list, feel free to share them down in the comments. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves. Have a good one, everyone.